if they are those who have broken the rules, and they are seeking a knowledge which they do not deserve, and which they do not have the character to use constructively, they could cause another deluge upon the face of the earth. Therefore, every effort apparently has been made in ancient times to protect the secrets of essential knowledge. There are records of legends and accounts everywhere of secret teachings, esoteric schools. There are accounts of ways by which the human being can develop faculties and powers at present beyond his capacity. The scoffer says the whole thing is superstition, that there are no such forces, but that isn't proven by scoffing. It is only proving by testing. I remember years ago, when I was in India, I met an old gentleman whom I make the hero of a book called The Guru. This old gentleman was a guru. I was never a disciple of his or anything of that kind, but I did know him. And we've talked about many things relating to the Yoga, Vedanta, Tantra of India. These secret arts which are said to have been given to the world by the gods in ancient times. And in talking about it, you see, this old gentleman was sitting there very quietly on a little white square like a sheet in his room in a little stucco house in Calcutta. He was sitting there with about 11 feet of his own hair. So I said to him, I'm going back to the States, and as one of the holy men of India, have you a message you would like to have carried to the American people? And the old gentleman, sitting in the midst of his hair, where it joined his head it was pure white, at the outer ends it was black, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Yes, there is. Tell the American people to be practical." That sounds like a very strange thing to say under the conditions. Because if there was anything that ever looked impractical, it was what he was doing. So I carried that question a little further. And he explained to me, he said, I would like to make a recommendation. He says, send over to us 5 or 10 of your best equipped scientists, the ones who have the greatest knowledge that your academies and schools, universities, and institutions can produce. Leave them with us for 10 years, and they will reform Western wisdom. We've built it all on the outside, when in fact we have failed in the greatest mystery of all, the realization that within ourselves are the secrets we are searching for everywhere else. And also within ourselves are energy resources which cannot be exhausted, and that there can be and should be an over-science of life by means of which human beings could build a world that would endure, a world that would be worth living in for everyone who lives here. Now, the old masters of the magic of Atlantis lost all by perversion. They lost themselves and they lost their lives. They lost their world and their beautiful cities and their temples. Nothing remained because they failed. Now, at the moment, we can also remind again of the Atlantis of Bacon, namely what we have to do. He said, Bacon in the New Atlantis said that we might say the motto of the great Atlantean experiment was that man should learn to know all that is possible for man to know, and should that nothing remain because they failed. Now, at the moment, we can also remind again of the Atlantis of Bacon, namely what we have to do. He said, Bacon in the New Atlantis said that we might say the motto of the great Atlantean experiment was that man should learn to know all that is possible for man to know, and should dedicate all he knows to the unselfish good of all that lives. Now, it's a pretty big order, and we're not working that way too well at the moment. But the principles still remain true. That when the individual works for himself, his empires fall. When he works for the common good, he builds that in which is the spirit of everlastingness. Now, among the mysteries that have been involved in the Atlantean story are the pyramids. And the pyramids are very interesting things. We know that they are in Egypt. We know that they're in Central America, but recently, a year or two ago, I saw aerial photographs of pyramids in the heart of China, which are not generally known, but it's been recognized. These pyramids, like the mounds of antiquity, seemingly have a meaning. And what that meaning is appears to be also rather uncertain. According to the conservative Egyptologists, and Mayaologists for that matter, the pyramids were simply magnificent monuments to the memories of dead pharaohs, kings, or emperors, or, if you want to be a little more idealistic, perhaps the testimonies to God and wisdom. But the pyramids are very strange things. Their distribution upon the surface of the earth is most extraordinary. Work is now being done, and I hope it will be carried on to a successful conclusion, to study and chart the locations of pyramids in relation to the magnetic fields of the planet. We know that the planet is a kind of crystal, that it has areas of fission, that it has magnetic fields, and that these magnetic fields are very important to the survival of life and to the distribution of energies. These magnetic fields may sometimes be the substitute for every method of locomotion or all forms of fuel in the world today. I went to the Pyramid of Giza, and I went through all the interior chambers of it. And there are some things about it that are very, very strange. Why should a tomb be ventilated? There are two great passageways leading from the king's chamber to the outside wall of the pyramid. They are like ventilators, not large enough for a person to go through, but large enough to permit a current of air. And then, after some time, no one knows when, the outer ends of these ventilators were blocked, but the openings to the inside are still open. The Great Pyramid's king's chamber has in the ceiling the largest stone, I guess, in the entire structure. It weighs many, many tons. The sarcophagus, so-called, has been largely nicked away by tourists, but it is a lighter stone box, much in the shape of a casket, but too small for a human body. The way the Egyptians mummified their dead and put one mummy case and sarcophagus over another before a final interring in the stone vault could not have been done in this case at all. It would have been utterly impossible. You know, so another interesting thing happened. Way back in the days of the glory of Baghdad, the great Sultan of the follower and descendant of the great Al-Rashid of the Arabian Nights, Sultan Al-Rashid bin Mamun, decided to open the Great Pyramid. He had been told that it was built by giants who were called the Shaddai, superhuman beings, and that within that pyramid, and those pyramids, they had stored a great treasure beyond the knowledge of man. So, taking his court with him, the Sultan went